Hello, and thank you for joining us today at the Bramble Patch. My name is Wendy, and today we've got Alicia on technicals. Today we're going to be learning how to use the twist and stitch ruler, which is one of the June Taylor products. And I'm going to try and throw some hints and tips in along the way about sewing. But first of all, I'd like to say a massive thank you to you all for your comments and emails about the tutorials that we've been putting on for you. We know that you're enjoying them. Thank you for your feedback. The one that we did on the freezer paper foundation piecing, in only 4 days, it had over 1,000 views. So thank you very much, and I hope you're enjoying them so far. So we've still got a lot lined up for you in the future, so do keep tuning in and watching us. So today we're going to use the twist and stitch ruler, but first of all I'm going to do a little demonstration on how to get precise joinings, even when you're just joining squares. Once you've mastered that, it just leads on into doing half square triangles and everything else. So first of all, I'm just going to show you a very simple construction to try and help you, to show you how to pin to make sure that you get quite an accurate joining. So I've already cut some squares. It doesn't matter what size they are. This is just a little demonstration to help you. These are just 5-inch squares that I've cut. And I've tried to cut them in plain fabrics so that you can actually hopefully see the way that I pin them. So first of all I'm going to do is take 2 fabrics and place them just right sides together. I'm not actually going to pin these, it's more the joinings between seams that I'm going to try and highlight to help you. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to sew using 1/4 inch all the way down this seam. So I'll just go over to the sewing machine. And all I'm going to do is I'm placing the foot on the edge of the fabric, and I'm just sewing straight the way down the edge of the fabric using my 1/4 inch foot. Like so. If I turn it over, I'm hoping that you can actually see the light colour stitching that I've got on here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to press the seam to one side. The reason I'm pressing the seam to one side is because I want to show how you can just nest the seams up to one another. And you generally press towards the darker fabric if that fits within the construction and the design that you're actually working on. So I'm just giving that a press like so. I'll take my second ones and I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to place them right sides together, like so. And once again, I'm going to sew 1/4 inch seam down the side. I'm going to open this up. Now, the one thing to remember is if you ever want to stitch in the ditch, never press your seams open, because if you do, it means you're sewing through thread and it will actually weaken your work. To do a stitch in the ditch, you do need to press the seam one way or another. And if anybody is unsure of what stitch in the ditch is, it means you're going to be stitching where the 2 fabrics join together on your work. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you how I pin this to get an accurate join on these 2 junctions here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this over, and if you can see, I've got the seams in opposite directions just here. Okay, I'm going to lay what hopefully is the seams on top of each other, and usually you can just feel that they nestle in. But if you're a beginner, or if you want to make sure you're absolutely accurate, what I would suggest you do is to place a pin in the seam approximately 1/4 inch down from the top, which is where you'll be sewing with your 1/4 inch foot, and put that pin through that seam. Now when you come out, you want it to be coming out actually on that seam on the fabric on the opposite side, the other block. Then pass the pin down and go back into that same seam. And when we come out, we actually want to make sure it's coming out on the top seam as well. And the reason we're doing it this way is to make sure that the under fabric isn't skewed or twisted in any way. So you can just gently tease that so that the tops are in. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to stitch right the way across here using a 1/4 inch seam again. So take it to my sewing machine. If you prefer to put other pins further along the block, that's absolutely fine. Whatever is comfortable for you and whatever works for you the best way. If it gives you confidence to use extra pins, then please do that. Now, as I approach the seam where the pin is, I want to just ease the pin out. I'm not removing the pin, I'm just easing it through so I can get quite close. Now, I'm just before the pin now. The needle is placed just before my pin. When I remove the pin, I need to remove it at a 90-degree angle. Don't twist it, because this will encourage one or the other layers of fabric to move, and that way you won't get a perfect join. So I'm just going to slide that out and then just carry on sewing across. Like so. Now, here we go. So all I'm going to do is open this up and show you the joining that we've got here on the inside. And there we go. I'm hoping that you can see that this joins up really nicely. Now, again, if you want to stitch in the ditch, you need to press that seam to one side, or you can press the seam open to try and eliminate the bulk and disperse it over the two blocks. I will just very quickly press it to one side for the moment. I do like to actually just press the back first and encourage it to go. And when I actually press it, I like to press in the direction of the seam. If you start going like this, you can actually stretch the fabric. So there we go. So I'm going to do one more now so we can just actually do it by feeling it. I've got another couple of squares here, so I'm going to do exactly the same here. Right sides together. I'm just going to very quickly do a seam on there. There we go. There we go. And once again, I'm going to press the seam to the dark fabric. First of all on the wrong side, then on the right side. What I'm going to do this time, I'm actually not going to use any pins whatsoever. I'm just going to roll this fabric on top of each other, and I am actually going to, oh, I put that the wrong way around. Okay, let's put it on, I'll just do it this way. There we go. I've twisted my block around, but never mind. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to nest these two seams here and feel that they're sitting next to each other, so there's no gap in between them. And if I just open that out, you can hopefully see that they're sitting against each other. So I'm just going to take that to the sewing machine, holding it in position, and just sew straight away down. I'm just keeping my finger on the seam just to make sure that nothing moves. There we go. Okay. Now here, if I open that up, you can actually see the join that we have there. And that's just by actually feel to make sure that you've actually got them sitting next to each other. So that leads us on to the next stage that we need to do in preparation for the twist and stitch. Now the twist and stitch, I've got a couple of examples here of actually what you can make with it. So this is the first one I ever used. I've never used the ruler before. This was the very first one. This quilt is made up using 2 charm packs, which obviously the squares are cut at 5 inches, and 1.25 meters of the background fabric. Okay, you don't just have to make blocks like this. You can make things like table runners, like so, and matching placemats. Now, I wanted to bring this one to your attention because this one was made out of a charm pack. So the table runner and 2 placemats. But I only had a cream, these were the squares left over. So if you put cream next to your background, which is also cream, it doesn't show up very much. Now that's something to be aware of when I show you the technique. Right. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to make the construction from what we're going to work. So this is one that I made earlier. So these are 5-inch squares, okay? And in the instructions that you get in the Twist and Stitch June Taylor ruler are all the calculations worked out for you. So if you use a 5-inch square of fabric to start with, the borders that you need to attach to the sides need to be 3.5 inches in width. It doesn't matter whether you're using 9 squares across or only 1. The border always needs to be 3.5 inches wide, okay? And if you want to use larger squares to start with, the calculations are also on here, ready for you and worked out for you to use. So I've already constructed this. So now I'm going to show you how you actually use the ruler. So this is the ruler, and everything on here is very easy to use. Because it's a 5.5-inch square, we actually need to use the 3.5-inch square in the center. So let's take it and see how we work it. I'm just going to move that out of the way just so I don't catch it. So all we need to do is place the black drawn lines on your seam. So I'm right-handed, I tend to start from the left-hand side and work across. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to place the black lines on my seams. So this is going horizontally on this seam and vertically here. Now there's not a seam, but it doesn't matter, that is how it's supposed to be. With most of the June Taylor products, they have like a little teardrop cut out at the bottom. And the way to use it is actually hold your rotary cutter, locking it now, hold it at an angle and actually drop it into that little cutout slot and push. Don't move the ruler, move to the opposite side and push. Now this is where you pick up and you twist your ruler. And once again, we're putting those black lines back in exactly the same position, but we've already twisted the ruler around. So now the lines that we're going to cut are at the top and at the bottom. So here we go. 1, 2. Now if I just lift that off, if I just pick this up, I'm going to place it at the top here. So we can start to build it up and you will see the pattern evolving very, very quickly. So once again, all we've got to do now is repeat what we've already done. but I'm going to the next seam. So the next seam is here. I'm placing the black lines on my stitched lines. And side, side, pick up, twist, place it on the seam, top, bottom, remove. So if you pick this one up, now the trick of it is to make sure that every time you place the new block you've cut, it actually matches the fabric of the previous one. So this is now forming the top of a pinwheel. So we'll move on to the next one and we will place it on here again. I tend to do it in the same orientation. I always go side, side, top, bottom. It sticks in my mind and it's very methodical, and that way you don't make any mistakes. So side, side, pick up, twist on the sewn seams, top, bottom. Now when I pick this one up, the green is going to match here. Okay, so we're now going to move on to the next one. Before I cut any more of this, I'm just actually going to show you the size. So you can see the size that I have made the original, and I've already made one the same size. So if I lay this actually on the prepared one, you'll see the size that it comes out to. I'm hoping you can see the comparison there. They're really pretty. So now I'm actually going to cut the second row. So here we go again, next row down. Just going to move that onto the table a little bit. Now, the first one I ever done is the one hanging behind me. And because I'd never used the ruler before, I needed to make sure that everything was going to stay in order. So I actually did a little method where I classed the first row here as A, and then every time I cut one, I put a little marker in the top left saying A1, A2, A3, and so forth. The second row would be B1, B2, and so on. And by doing this, I knew if anybody walked past and everything floated on the floor, because all the blocks were actually labelled in the top left-hand corner, I knew the orientation that it would be in. So there we go. So if I pick this one up and place it here, now if you remember, I said the fabrics need to join up, and there you're joining the greys together. So now you've got 2/3 of a pinwheel. And when I cut this next one, you're going to get the full grey pinwheel. These rulers, the more you use them, the better they are. Oops. Because they loosen up a lot. It's one of these products that gets better with age, I think. I've had mine a couple of years now and made numerous things. You can probably see hanging behind me, there's a heart that I did for Valentine's Day. There we go, there's the grey one going in. And now you can see the bottom left leg of the green one appearing as well. So you can see the heart on the wall behind me, and that was great fun to do. And you can do all sorts. You can do ones that twist, swirl, snowmen, gingerbread men, all sorts of things, and they're just great fun to work out. And you can actually just use leftover fabrics. You don't necessarily have to have everything coordinating, and they look as though they're very complicated, but they're really not. They are brilliant to put on borders of quilts, and extremely effective. Okay, so there we go. If I pick that up, you can now see the pinwheels. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to join these together and show you how effective and how quick this builds up. I'm just going to join these. Okay. I'll also show you in a minute what you actually get left over and how you can actually use the very small amounts of fabric left over, so you've got absolute minimum wastage. There we go. Also, when you do this, I always do it, so if all of the rows of the odd numbers, so 1, 3, 5, 7, I will press the seams to the left and then make a point of the even rows, press them to the right. That way I know everything is going to nestle in and fit together really nicely. There we go. There we go. So that's the first row together. Like so. I'll just stitch this one together. And we are nearly there. So the first row I've pressed to the left, so this one will go to the right. And I know that this goes here because I've got matching greens and matching pinks. And for those of you that have already got the ruler, it's just sometimes to have good to have a little refresher, and it actually gets your thoughts going on what you can be making. These make brilliant Christmas placemats and everything. Okay. There we go. So as you can see, that's all going to fit in nicely here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to pop a pin in these two little joins here. If I roll that over, you can see that these two seams are going in opposite directions, so they just nest together really, really nicely. And I can feel that they're fitting, but I will actually pop a pin in it. So I'm going to go through the seam on the front. And if you want to ease that open and go in the seam on the back one, push it in, come into the seam and out on the seam on the front, just to make sure that everything's lined up really nicely. And I like to push the head down so that I know I've got no movement there. Once again, I'm going to go into the seam here, back in the seam, and back out of the seam on the front. And if I push that down, it means I've got absolutely no movement. So I'm just going to stitch across there. Just slip that out at a 90-degree angle so that I'm not twisting anything. And stitch straight the way along to the end. Oops. Now, if I just open this up, you will see that we've got junctions here and here. And all I need to do now is just give that a little press. Like I say, if I'm not going to stitch in the ditch, these seams could be pressed open. And with Alicia's amazing skills, I know she's going to be able to zoom in and show you the joins on there. Okay, so when you do this, obviously you have a very unusual piece of fabric left over, which looks like this. So this is the leftover piece from when I actually cut and made this one. But because I don't like to waste fabric, when I actually made the one on the back here, these little squares here are all actually made from the squares that's left in between your fabric. So that when you finish using them, the only piece of wastage you have is this little tiny piece here. It's very, very minimal wastage. So this square here, once it's trimmed down, will become one of these here. So that's the tutorial for today on the June Taylor Twist and Stitch Ruler. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please come and join us again. Thank you for myself, Alicia, and from the rest of the Bramble Page staff here. Thank you. Bye-bye for now.